I'm Matt.
I'm Kerry.
We are the Stagmer brothers of Baltimore Knife and Sword. We're going to be building some of your favorite weapons, and some weapons that you've never seen before.
This is Man-at-Arms, Reforged.
I've wanted to do an 80s cartoon build for a long time. Top on my list was Voltron's Blazing Sword. Kerry came up with a really cool technique to show you guys. It's a whole lot different than anything you've ever seen on Man-at-Arms, so let's get right to it. It's now time to start drawing our Voltron Blazing Sword blade. I'm really excited to do this build. I've already found a couple complications though. Since it's an 80s cartoon, there are no high-res pictures of this sword blade, especially none flat on the angle like we want. So I actually found that it's easier to work from a newer toy, which is a little miniature sword toy, but there's a good high-res photo of it, so I'm gonna go ahead and start tracing the blade now. All right, so I got the one side of the point drawn. I'm gonna use the mirror tool, select the center of the point, come straight down on a line here, boom. So now we have both sides. Boom, boom. There's our two drawings. Hand them off to John. He's gonna get 1 cut and 1/4 inch, 1 3/16, so we can go from there.
We're going to have flames coming out of this sword. So to do that, I'm having John cut me 2 swords. It may seem like we're duplicating our efforts, but this will allow me to take the thicker blade and cut and set the jets in. I'm gonna do that by carving directly in the 1/4 inch thick side. And then we'll be adding the 3/16 side to the top of it.
Even though this build just got started, I'm already super excited. I've wanted to make the Voltron sword for a long time, and now not only do I have 1 sword, but I have 2 blades to grind. We got the thick 1/4 inch one that Kerry's gonna do all the milling in. We're gonna have all our little piping in there for the propane, so this flames up really nice. And the 3/16 one that I can go ahead and grind all the edges on and get that ready for heat treat.
So to create the propane manifold inside of the blade on the Voltron sword, I'm actually using the CNC mill. It's going to cut a long straight line down the center. And then just a V pattern all the way up. After that, I'll set it up with a very tiny cutter to bring jets out the side of the blade.
I'm gonna draw that arrowhead shape at the point for Kerry, and he'll do that part on the CNC, and then he'll run the manual groove up to the arrow, and it'll look like one fluid piece. One thing that this toy doesn't show is there's actually a cross in the cartoon version of this sword right at the tip here. I'm just gonna do 2 simple lines for this cross, reason being the shape of the cutter is actually gonna determine the shape of that cross, and while Kerry's milling in that arrow shape, he's gonna go ahead and do the cross at the same time in the same program. While Kerry's milling our propane channels in the other half of the blade, I'm gonna go ahead and get grinding on this half and get it ready for heat treat. This time we're gonna do something a little different. Normally when we do a double-edged sword, like a European sword, your flats are gonna be like this, your edges are gonna be like this. In this case, we're making it out of 2 halves, so what I'm gonna do is something called a chisel grind. So I'm gonna have my flat like this, my edge all the way over here, and then the back side of the blade like that, and on the same thing on the other side, be like that. It's a little thinner. We're gonna put them together, and the jets are gonna be all carved in on this side. So the propane's gonna pump out that edge. This edge is gonna be our sharp cutting side. When we put them together, they're gonna become that type of edge. Let's do it.
Matt begins edging the first of these 2 blades. There are multiple cutting surfaces on these blades. Matt's going to have to edge each blade separately, then they'll be heat treated, then we'll assemble them. So we've got this back off the milling machine now. All the jets are cut in place. In a couple of places, I didn't have the lines drawn all the way out, so I'm going in with a file and hand cutting them out to the edge. I'm also going through and deburring everything inside and outside. Pretty much anything, any little burr or anything that's sticking into these jets is going to interfere with the way it flows, and it's going to prevent the flame from being even.
So after the swords come off the CNC mill, after Kerry cut the propane manifold grooves, we brought it over to the Seijo mill. This is a horizontal mill. We're cutting the fuller 60 thousandths wide by 160 thousandths deep.
So I'm doing the Voltron cabochon that's going to go on the end of the sword handle. So it's going to be this oval shape. What I'm going to do is heat this up, heat the glass up, slump the glass into a big pile, then stick it to this, and then shape it. And flame soften everything, all the edges, so it's going to make a nice round cab for us. And then once I'm done with that, it goes in the kiln and gets annealed for about 5 hours, lowering the temperature slowly till it's at room temperature.
All right, I got the central portion of our Voltron guard design. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut 2 of each of those central sections and then 2 of what are gonna be our bezels on the either end. Now that we have the guard pieces cut on the plasma, we gotta deburr and take all that slag away that's left over from the cut. Next step I have to do is take all 4 washers that are going to go on either side of this guard and add bevels to it just like I did on this first one here. It's going to give us a nice look, give us a little extra depth, and then we'll add our red gemstone in the middle later.
For the Voltron sword and pommel, we have these indentations, and we've decided rather than making glass cabs, we're going to do them like stained glass. So we're cutting pieces of stained glass the same way someone would do it to make a glass window. So this is a diamond bit that rotates around, so I'm able to cut and not shatter the glass because there's water in here that comes up and keeps it cool.
Since this weapon is a hybrid between a prop and an actual sword, we've decided that there are certain areas that will be heat treated and sharp, and certain areas that will have the propane jets.
Voltron Blazing Sword! We finally have all the machining done on both our blade halves. It's now almost time to start welding them together, but first I gotta remove all the rust from the surface of these blades. We don't want to take any chance of anything inhibiting the welds. John's gonna be welding for a couple hours, and if any of those welds are bad, it's gonna be a real pain in the butt to fix later. Time to start joining these 2 blades together as one. John's gonna start with a MIG welder and tack his pieces together. Then he's gonna be really careful and use the TIG welder to weld around the jets and make sure he doesn't seal any of those shut. He's gonna be at this for a few hours, so I'll let you check back in with him later. Okay, we have our parts cut out for our side plate. It's kind of like a main gauche guard. The way it works is we have the base of our sheet metal here. We got the outside perimeter that will lay over top. Cross will go here. The crown will go on top like that. But what I gotta do first is tack weld the corners. Go out and hot form the whole thing. And then I'll grind the welds back off, take everything apart, polish it, and then we'll weld everything solid and we'll be good. So last night I was able to do the finishing metal work on our shell guard. I planished with this hammer the whole surface to give us nice dippling. I then brassed all the parts, and then we flipped it around from behind and plug welded all the pieces together. Now all I have to do is go in and add a little extra brassing where some of the discoloration from the weld happened. And then we're gonna place the whole thing in the kiln, bake it, and hopefully turn this stainless shell bright blue. Since I've been crying so much about all the grinding I've done lately, John's gonna go ahead and start blending these welds for me. He's gonna move to the slack belt sander and start cleaning up those tricky corners at the tip, and then move on to the rest of the blade.
Using a fine silver step bezel that Lauren's soldered to shape, she closes it down to hold the cabochon in place before we adhere it to the sword.
The last step we have to do with this blade before final assembly is to Scotch-Brite it and get it in our final polish. I go very carefully on the edges and then go up and down on the flats. It's finally ready to hand it off to John. John uses a MIG welder to tack his pieces together. Then he uses a TIG to go around the entire perimeter and make this guard one solid piece.
John now welds on a gas pipe that will be used to feed propane into the burner.
For our first 80s cartoon build, this thing was a blazing success. We showed a lot of different techniques, and making a sword actually light on fire on its own is definitely a first on Man-at-Arms. Hope you guys appreciate all the work we put in this one. Someone better have a fire extinguisher handy, because this is going to be one hot demo.
Click here to subscribe, or click here to watch more episodes. Thanks for watching Man-at-Arms Reforged. We need to know what you want the guys to build, so tell us in the comments below what weapons you want to see next.